This episode is general information only. Full disclaimers in the notes.
Welcome back, episode 7. How are you? You still got your tan from Greece, and it's been at least 6 weeks. You're looking better than me. I just got back from Colombia, so
Looking better than me. You're still on holidays, mate. Or you're back to the grind.
I am back at work, but thankfully I made it back from Colombia in one piece.
Very good.
It's a libertarian's dream over there, but you could lose yourself very quickly. Let me put it to you that way. How was Greece?
Greece was good, mate. Greece was fantastic.
Any highlights? I saw a video of you. It looked like a Backstreet Boys album cover. You were in white, and the sand was behind you.
There's one.
It looked good.
Yeah, that was fantastic with the fan. But a couple of the places we went to, like Mykonos, and like day clubs called Scorpio or something like that.
Yeah,
incredible.
Oh, fantastic.
So there was some really, really good stuff. Good food, good people. They were very welcoming, very good to tourists.
Yes. I found the same in Colombia. Good food, good people. Roads are terrible.
Yeah. Infrastructure could be better.
Tesla wouldn't last 2 minutes on those roads. It's a very dicey. All the road rules are just, things to consider. They're not really rules. They're just more customs over there. I don't know what's going on there, but let's just say I don't think their taxes are going to their roads, that's for sure. So, but that's another political
But
hot
it
potato.
seems to work.
It seems to work. They keep a very positive spirits. Their nightclubs are great. The nightlife is good, and the people keep a really good attitude. So a lot to take away from there. But it was nice to come back to our safe roads. But loving the contrast and keen to get back over there again. So, mate, it's been about 2.5 months since our last pod.
We said we would be consistent. We can't do another one in 2.5.
I know.
We're back on cadence now. We're back.
Agreed. And it's because we had back-to-back holidays. That's why we were away for a couple of months. And I think I'd like to think we're trying to build anticipation. Potentially all we've built is resentment. But we'll find out once I see my Spotify analytics about how much resentment is actually there. So that'll be interesting.
I'm sure people aren't commenting in a bad way against you, mate.
Mate, do you want to give us a bit of a run through? We covered off a bit last episode. We were looking at the financial first aid, those first 90 days, things that guys need to sort of consider post-separation. Do you want to run us through a couple of those things that we were looking at?
Well, I think you described it well as triage, right? We were applying the tourniquet to your financial loss bleeding. And so we did things like joint accounts and credit cards, making sure you either close or split or de-risk or speak to your ex-spouse about that. Get the budget basics done, print out your statements and face the reality of what you're actually spending. Try and find out how many subscriptions you've got going, so Netflix, etc. Limit your eating out, which was good. You had a good 7-day rule from memory.
About the spending?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can kind of put some of your wants and desires on ice for 7 days, it kind of will sort of bring out whether or not it's an impulse buy or something that you really need, because having that separation from the purchase can kind of do that for you. So it's not to say no, it's just to say wait and see whether it's something that you really want, because it's interesting. Once you sleep on something, I don't want to have that buyer's remorse, that's for sure, particularly when you're at this stage where you're trying to focus on utility spending and those types of urgent.
And also you did child support 101. You did a little bit of, the private arrangements versus going through CSA.
Yeah, and the pros and cons of that.
Yep.
So that was the financial triage. Obviously, this is the part 2. The part 2, there's a lot to cover because we're going to be looking at the next 12 months. So we've sort of broken this down to 8 pillars. We'll try and get through half of the content today and then the half on our next episode. Really, you could make an episode out of each of these topics, but what we're trying to do, we're trying to sort of pile it all in just to give people a sense of areas that they should be considering looking at. We don't want to kind of drip feed critical information to our listeners. Down the track, obviously, we can deep dive and we can bring on guests and things like that for specific topics. But this is more about giving a holistic view of the next 12 months. And hopefully some of our listeners will come away with some tidbits that might help them in terms of things that they need to look at in different parts. So do you want to sort of talk us through some of those topics that we're going to cover off?
Well, we got those 8, probably the 8 pillars, I'd say. But if you want to say there's housing and living decisions, like they're very important. We've got two, the debt strategy beyond the triage, trying to get that under control, building a safety buffer, that's in there for cash, and superannuation reboot. That's number 4. Number 5, investing basics. So we'll do a little bit on that. We'll probably do that in the next episode. Insurance and estate planning, look at that. And then mental bandwidth and support. We're pretty big on that to make sure that everyone's in a good state of mind. And then tracking your net worth and goals. So hopefully they're the 8, but we'll probably get through 4 today, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. The mental side, that's probably the things that, the thing I should say that people need to sort of consider first and foremost before anything. Try and get your headspace right. But we'll sort of knock these out one by one. So in terms of, let's kick things off, mate. Housing and living arrangements. Where do we want to sort of focus or start on that one?
Well, that one's more about, it's going to be your biggest cost straight out initially. So it does require you to be pretty ruthless with this decision.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, remembering we're thinking about 12 months. We're not talking about 5 years here. You're talking about that first 12-month rebuild. And you've probably got a few options. Sydney rent is up 28% in the last couple of years. So I know we're an expensive part of the world, but the world has had similar increases from inflation. So yeah, it's your big cost.
And I think that, cost of living is something that's really impacting, even well-established couples, let alone people that are living separated or in more compromised situations. So certainly we all need to tighten our belt irrespective of what sort of living arrangements or relationship status you're in. But particularly around this time, guys really need to focus on that, being realistic about their budgets as well, cutting out all that non-essential spending, taking the numbers head on and going back to a bit of a utility mindset, I would say, in terms of their budget. It's going to be frugal times for the next 12 months, but 12 months is not a long time, but certainly if you do it properly, you can put yourself in a much better position in 12 months' time if you look at it honestly.
So from a housing perspective, I guess it's either one part, you're not living together, right, with the ex-spouse. So you definitely have a second living arrangement. And then you've also got a decision, I guess we could probably assume here, if you have children, becomes an extra hard decision. We've talked about it briefly, but right now it's what are your options in terms of housing?
It's an interesting question, that one. And a lot of guys will find themselves with dual expenses around that. They'll be potentially paying off a mortgage or they're still on the lease for rental. I would say if you're renting and you're still on the lease, you kind of want to get yourself off that lease ASAP. So I'd be speaking to the real estate agent and trying to get that expense covered, formally. And then there's other options that our listeners might want to consider. And again, you really want to park your pride during this time. So if that means doing a house share situation, taking up a granny flat, taking up an ultra small studio, if you need to, potentially living with a family member as well. These are all things that people should consider on the basis that, it's a short-term strategy and it's not forever.
And mate, what about if you find yourself with these two houses effectively? Because you've probably got an option now. I'm going to rent a house that fits, let's say, my 3 kids in it as well. Or I go to a 1-bedder or a 2-bedder place.
Well, if it was me and I was doing it, or things I'd want to consider is that if I did have a debt like another mortgage, I'd be certainly ringing up the bank and looking for some type of mortgage relief on an interim basis. I mean, you will eventually sort out your financial affairs if you are moving into a separation, divorce situation is becoming a permanent arrangement. So if you can get some sort of relief potentially on the principal and interest payments, sometimes they'll suspend payments for a period of time due to financial hardship and things like that.
Okay.
These are things.
So you just call up your bank for that?
Yeah, absolutely. Call up your bank, depending upon your financial situation as well. Maybe where you are currently, maybe you do qualify for some sort of rent assistance, but you don't know. So
Yeah.
the idea is really start poking around in those areas, ring the bank. What do they say? If you don't ask, you don't get.
Mm.
You might be surprised what the banks are willing to do. You might be surprised what your landlord is prepared to do in terms of giving you some sort of relief. You might be entitled to a benefit from Centrelink. You don't know until you explore these options. It's not for me to say, but it doesn't hurt to go out there and explore this stuff. There's only benefits to be had.
Okay.
So definitely look at those. And I guess the other thing is I think we chatted about this just a little while ago around utility. I think everything's got to be utility, where you live, how you live, the things that you buy. If it doesn't have a genuine utility or purpose, then maybe something that you need to park. So I think it's really important with every purchase you make, because money is fairly restricted. You should really think about that. I go back to that e-bike situation, the e-bike versus, the smart trainer that I've got in my garage. One gets me to work at half the price and I really like it, and the other one I hardly get on. If I was going through that type of situation, I know which one would actually serve me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So certainly, and just an example, but taking that similar sort of approach, is this really serving me, or is this a nice to have? As things will come, they'll just come later after you've kind of sorted yourself out, I think.
Do you want the triage?
Yeah, I think maybe you mentioned a point about impacting the kids and trade-offs
Yeah.
around family. What did that sort of mean for you in terms of?
No, I'm more so thinking about if you're in a divorce situation, then there's going to be a split of assets, right? So if that is done and you've got two, one person with a mortgage, one person renting someplace, there's another option where you rent a 4-bedroom home or something. Effectively, I understand it's a cost down, but depending on a situation, I wondered whether that is a better option, that you actually can split the kids across that process,
Yeah, in terms of from a comfort perspective, giving them like two genuine homes.
Yeah.
I think that's the goal. I think it's the goal. I just think it's a medium-term strategy.
It's not the 12 months. Yeah.
Well, it depends. If you can settle your financial affairs within 12 months, then by all means, maybe you've got the money and you don't have that additional expense. I would find that fairly unrealistic if you're carrying two housing expenses or living arrangement expenses. I think that works if you can cut it clean, for example, get yourself off a lease, then that would make sense. You've just got one living expense. But again, I think that's on a case-by-case basis. But
Okay.
what about debt strategy beyond the triage? I know you love leverage. You love it. You love it. Your risk appetite is
for the
a lot
right assets.
higher.
I like it.
I know. It's funny. We've got our risk appetites for different things. I feel like you've got a higher risk appetite than me for certain things. I start to, do caca in my pants when things start to go badly, where I feel like you take it more in your stride.
I've probably been around finance for a bit, my entire life, and therefore I've seen positive growth from asset classes, and because of that, debt doesn't seem to hurt as much. But you need to have an income that can service the debt. And if you don't have that, or your expenses are now rapidly too high, then having debt which acquires income producing assets or capital growth assets, that's part of a broader way to look at debt. But initially, if we're talking about going through a divorce, then I think the issues should be that you should attack the debt. At the moment, I'm pretty sure Aussies owe somewhere around $18 billion on credit cards. That's decent money from 20 million people.
It's a lot, and it's probably most of the people that are in that debt are the people that shouldn't be in that debt, if that makes sense. Yeah.
They might have bought your luxury things, not your utility things back in. Yeah. And that adds up to, call it $2,000 a year in interest, $200 a month. These things sort of compound through. So I guess you've got different ways to attack the debt that you have immediately. And this is just about focusing your cash in a way that delivers the most bang for buck.
Absolutely. And I guess we're not, again, we need to reiterate, this is not giving advice. This is just about all we're trying to do with this podcast and with this episode is to give our listeners places to look and things to think about. We're not telling you to do this or that. We're just laying a lot of different options and things for consideration on the table. And then based on your own personal situation and needs, some of it will resonate with you, some of it probably not, but we're trying to reach a broad audience here. You mentioned about the different strategies around debt and how to focus, and different debt has different types of interest rate. You mentioned credit cards. That's the absolute, that's a ball buster for most people. But then you've got other lower interest debts, car loans and things like that, still pretty high. And then you've got other personal debts and things like that, which could be lower again. Some people like to, and I think the first thing is you've got to really understand what your debt is. Look at the totality of your debt and then look at ways, could you possibly consolidate that debt? There are places out there that do debt consolidation and credit card consolidation. And I think these are things that people should really start to look at to see if they can wrap up some of their debt into a lower interest type of debt, which will allow them to have one debt to focus on at a lower interest rate without having debt floating around everywhere. So definitely things to consider if you've got multiple debt. Have you got any sort of comments on that?
I remember back GFC sort of days a long time ago, which was there were a lot of people who had credit card debt and then they'd refinance that credit card debt with a 0 interest rate credit card from and it was obviously a customer acquisition sort of model. And then they'd roll them all into that one. And then all of a sudden they get to the end of the 12 months there and really not made a dent. So then they'd roll it into something else, into a different one. I don't know if the strategy worked, but that was a strategy I saw a bit. The other ones are probably, if you want to have a snow theme to this, you can have an avalanche model or a snowball model. The avalanche model is where you direct your free cash flow to the form of debt that has the highest interest rate, pay that one down as quickly as possible. So that's called, credit card, something rolling at 21%, or go for a snowball sort of method, allows you to pick off, obviously you have to keep making your minimum payments on everything else, but it allows you to pick off different smaller debts and get rid of them. And that's actually a sort of mind game on yourself to clear that one up.
And I think that's really interesting. And it kind of, you may find yourself, for example, snowball may not seem the most logical, but it might be the one that actually gets people across the line because they are getting the small wins and having the avalanche method. And if you've got, 20K in credit card debt at 21% and you're putting in 500-600 to it, it feels like an eternity to get a win. Whereas you've got, a $1,500 debt and you can clear that out. It's lower interest, but you've had a win. So I think there's a real emotional side to this. And it's really about what gets people coming back. I liken it going to the gym. You start a program, just turn up for 20 minutes a day to get into the habit of doing it, and you're going to get a bit of a win. If I go over there for an hour and a half, there's going to be a problem after about a week. So again, different people have different approaches, and it's all about what works for you. I think is the right approach is the one that works for you. So consider all these things and just be realistic based on your temperament and personality. Go with the one that you think is going to serve you the best in terms of compliance. Is probably the way to go.
Yeah, that sounds.
What about if you have little windfalls like, tax refunds, bonuses? Sometimes you come across small inheritances and things like that. What do we do with those, I guess?
well, without giving advice here, the ones that you're paying down the higher interest rates that are probably your non-deductible higher interest rate, not tax deductible interest rates. Those probably would be higher on your agenda of directing that. But look, when people get tax refunds, most of us are already earmarking those for some sort of expense. But you're right. If we're in the 12-month, right? We're doing a rebuild. So if you can direct those to paying down debts or doing either the snowball or avalanche method there, then go for it. That's going to give you a win as well.
So I think the message is for our listeners to consider, if you do come across little lump sums or bonuses and things like that, think about what utility can you bring to that money. Yeah, as opposed to, and treat yourself along the way, obviously, but just make those treats relative to the situation that you're in. Don't pay off a $2,000 credit card debt and go buy a $5,000 bike. Something I might do.
That sounds good.
Mate, what about safety buffers? This is the time, past 3 months, people are trying to, and our listeners, they're trying to get back some sort of security in their life. And part of that is, I guess, building a bit of a safety buffer around that. How do our listeners go about that?
Well, this is about the savings part. So directing part of your net income weekly or monthly, fortnightly into some savings plan, whether it be like high interest saver account with your bank or something like that, readily available cash, just to cover your essential living expenses. So this is your safety net. This is the one that you can rely upon to stop you going back into debt.
Exactly. Most people in that situation that have been kind of living off debt, they are not used to seeing money in the bank, particularly in a savings account. So I think seeing a number in there becomes a psychological shift. I'm moving in a different direction. Interestingly, I saw a statistic, 41% of Australians could not meet a $1,000 financial expense with saving, which means that, 40% of Aussies don't have $1,000 sitting in their savings at the ready for an emergency.
Yeah, well, that's
which is pretty alarming. Just say putting $1,000 in the bank in an emergency fund, you're already better off than 40% of people. So it does seem like a big slog, but small things will take you big places. So consider that. And also, if you do have, goals around savings or, whether it be a $10,000 saving or things like that, just like anything, breaking it down into small wins, where it be $2,000 increments and giving yourself, something positive or a treat at the end of that, just to concentrate to yourself that you've got that discipline and giving yourself some small wins along the way. Anything from your side around sort of financial goals or?
I was just going to say, if you can automate that saving, probably make it easier for you.
And what are the different strategies around automation?
Just you can either go to your employer and ask them to split your monthly income or fortnightly, weekly income and put one part of it in one bank account that you don't access all the time and then the other part somewhere else. So that automates it, takes away the temptation. Or you can set it up in your own accounts. All the major banks have iSavers or something like that, an eSaver account, which is more difficult to access to get money out of it. That's another sort of lock and type scenario. So that would work good. The other one probably.
Sorry, just going back on that, because there are a few ways based on, I guess, people's temperaments or what's getting them across the line. And I think to your point, the set and forget it's important. Not seeing that money from the outset, I think, is a good thing if you can help it. And ultimately, if you can redirect, to your point, from the payroll level, it's not even showing up in your net pay. It's already out. You know what I mean? And then the other, you talk about direct debit, or you can set up, recurring transactions and things like that to funnel money in on specific dates and things like that, which is still set and forget. It's really just up to you in terms of what's going to get you to reduce those temptations. If you do it at the payroll level, does that work? But it's like superannuation. People don't know there's superannuation's coming out each month because it just does, right? You never see it, but you're building up a future that way. But yeah, certainly different horses for courses on that one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sorry,
Well,
you were going to mention
I
something?
was going to say also know your weak spots. This is a 12-month plan. You know who you are. That's probably the point. If you're a surfer, and you like to go into the surf shop every week, sooner or later, that's a weak spot for you. You're going to go down to temptation at some point, especially if your surfboard's good enough to keep going on. And, this is not the time to be buying all brand new.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
So
100%.
So know who you are. I'd just say.
So for me, I'd avoid JB Hi-Fi, for example.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
I'm a
you
rat.
love your technology.
I'm a rat with the technology, so I would avoid that. But again, it could extend to social engagements and things like that. If you know that every time you go out, you're going to drop 200, 250 on drinks and a meal, then maybe slow that down a bit and avoid those situations which are going to absolutely eviscerate your account.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Yeah.
You can always catch up with your mates at a different point in time.
Yes.
Meet them for
100%.
a bike ride or a run or something like that instead.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of healthy options out there that don't cost money. I think we just get into a bit of a habit of associating spending with happiness or spending with joy. And really, if you sit down and look at what brings you joy in life, write that list. Just write a top 10 list, and if there's 5 that are free, maybe focus on those 5.
I like it. Or as the Greeks, the Stoics would do.
Yeah. We love our stoicism, don't we?
We love it. Yeah, got inspired by those guys. Yeah, there is nothing that you possess that you get to keep, right? When you're gone, you don't keep it. So treat that accordingly. So those 5 things that that are free, they're exactly the same.
Yes.
Getting those experiences or doing something else.
I think we focus so much on things, and it's really about being present, being and prioritizing. I was just thinking about this last night. I went for a walk after dinner, and I was just thinking about how, as a society, I think that we've just brainwashed ourselves so much to associate wealth with things. And I feel our definition of wealth is skewed. We don't see wealth as, this guy has the best relationship with his kids and his wife. You know what I mean? Like, I just think we've got such a narrow definition of wealth. And when people think of wealth, they think about assets and they think about money. But what does it really mean to be wealthy and fulfilled? For me personally, it's about the quality of my relationships and the quality of my health. If I've got those 2 things going well and I've got enough books to read, then I'm happy, and friendships obviously, but then I'm a pretty sort of happy, content guy. I don't know. I still like toys, don't worry. But me going off on a tangent.
Well, that is the weak spot, right? That is the weak spot. If you can cover your weak spots or attempt to get better in your weak spots, then these other things we've been talking about are going to be easier for you. Very much so. It's very hard to find the extra free cash to pay off my credit card if I'm always down at the surf shop spending it on brand new surf, right? So, yeah, I think that they're all worthwhile. But that was a couple of episodes back where it was really about working on yourself.
I love it. And last topic, because we're going to break this up into 2 episodes. I think it'd be too traumatic for people to look at all 8 pillars.
Yeah.
Let's just focus on 4 so people can digest, have a cry, rebuild, and then get back for the next one. Superannuation, that's quite the topic, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a lot to it. One thing that surprised me was when I looked through the myGov system, And if you've never logged into that before, you should, because this is where you're going to get your Medicare stuff for your kids, and you're going to do all these other things on that myGov. So we get identified, but it was relatively easy to switch funds and to claim funds, things that I thought would be very difficult. You just got to set it up because there is a decent amount of wealth. If you say 40 to 45, 50, you've built up money in that superannuation fund that you didn't really know you had. And one of the, do you want me to roll off a few here?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah. So number one, I would say first off, you got to check your superannuation funds to find out who the beneficiaries of your fund are. So the trustee of your fund, if it's a industry fund, let's say, we'll just use that, or a commercial one, you want to have a look at who the funds, the trustee has recorded as your beneficiaries. And I think you want to get straight onto that.
So for our listeners, what do you mean by beneficiaries? Because some people may not actually
for beneficiaries,
know what
that just means who, if you were to pass away, who should the trustees pay that money to? Most people put it in, you can do a couple of things. You can put it into your will, or you can nominate for that beneficiary, the trustee, to pay it directly.
Yes.
And you can do those binding as well.
Yes, binding and non-binding. And I think for our listeners, if you're looking at it, write that down, binding versus non-binding, because they have very different consequences in terms of who the trustee is directed to pay. And it has quite significant consequences for your estate. So I would ask our listeners to educate themselves around that and then check what their beneficiary situation looks like, if they've actually even put beneficiaries down.
Yeah. And knowing that you're going to go through transitions. You're already going through one, right? We're talking about, but you'll go through another transition where you'll end up, maybe with a blended family, and kids from the first marriage, kids from the second marriage, maybe stepkids, etc. So there's these things that you need to consider, and that's all in your superannuation fund. So to your point, Josh, they've got to educate themselves, and they could call up their superannuation fund and get the information directly from the fund, because each fund has a different trust deed and different things that they run to. So please, everyone, check that on your superannuation fund statements. First off, you've got to find out where is your super funds, where is your super balances.
And that brings us to the next point, which is about super consolidation, because there's a lot of people out there that have got more than one superannuation fund. They may not know it. They may have had a job for, 2-3 years in their 20s and forgotten all about that, and then went to the next fund and forgotten all about that money that could be sitting in there. Now, one thing that our listeners need to be mindful of is if you've got multiple funds, you've got multiple fees. You could have multiple insurance policies against that. What does that mean materially? You could be paying a lot more than you should. And you could have a fund out there, particularly a smaller one from another job, that could be absolutely getting eviscerated by admin fees and insurance premiums on policies you didn't even know that you had. And then people check out their balances and realize 1,000, but now I've got zero in there because it's been eaten up by fees and this insurance policy that I didn't know about and I didn't even want. So find out where your super is. Going back to your myGov, you can actually find out a lot of that information because it lists your policies. And to your point, it does offer that consolidation service, which is easy to consolidate balances and things like that. So
they're usually matched where you've given your tax file number to the superannuation fund. Now, 20 years ago, maybe the superannuation fund didn't collect it. So just because it's there doesn't mean that if you log into myGov, it's necessarily there. So you also want to check for Find My Super, which is the government one. There's heaps of people out there, scammers around. Please be careful. We only want you to go to the government sites and see there, and then take your advice from, if you have a financial planner, take it from them, or your accountant. Maybe they can point you in the right direction as well.
17.5 billion in lost super still floating around.
Wow, that's huge.
It's huge. And today,
pay out everyone's credit card debts if we go back to that first number.
I don't think the credit card companies would like that, Kieran.
No.
I don't think they're wanting people to be financially responsible.
Josh, is there
Yeah.
something else as well about super where if you're in financial hardship or you've got medical expenses, you can...
Yes, there is. You can apply under financial hardship. You need to meet certain conditions of release
Yep.
under financial hardship, but certainly there is a criteria there. If you go to your fund, you can, each fund has got an application that you can review. They'll give you a checklist or a criteria of financial hardship. Then you need to put in all your paperwork, all of your financial statements and assets and income and things like that. They'll normally have a team, like a claims team, that would assess that claim. And based on the merits and the statements and your balances and things like that, they'll do like an assets income test. And based on that result, will determine whether or not you are entitled to a financial hardship. And they may determine that, if you apply for $10,000, they might say, well, based on us, we can give you $3,000 based on that assessment. Does that kind of make sense?
That's what, so basically speak to your super fund.
Speak to the super fund. They'll be able to
Yeah.
tell you where the form is, how to download it, and just work with them. They've got teams that case manage that kind of stuff. It's really just about, to your point, Kieran, we just want to educate our listeners enough for them to understand possibilities and where to look. Right. So I would look at that. Our listeners, particularly around the middle age group, salary sacrificing as well. That's a big one. That's where you can, direct your employer to make additional contributions on your behalf up to $30,000. And that gives you tax concessions and things like that. So on a net basis, it's kind of, you would be off doing that for some people. But again, you need to have a look at your super balance, have a look at your concessional caps and things like that. One of the good things is, particularly for people that may not be that aware of, their superannuation or may not be making additional contributions, there is a thing called carry forward contributions, and that's for the last 5 years. If you've got any leftover concessional contributions unused for the last 5 years, they will compound, and then you can actually leverage those. So if you've got $30,000 for this year in concessional contributions, you might look and again go to the ATO. All the information's there. They might say you've got another $50,000 in concessional contributions. Well, now you've got $80,000 in contributions you could make and get a concession. Again, not advice, just places to look.
And this probably isn't in your first 12 months, right? In your first 12 months, you're trying to, for that particular one, I would have thought cash flows.
Correct. But you know what? It's just, again, this is about getting into the habits too, Kieran.
Yeah.
Even if you set up the structure to say, you know what, I'm going to set up salary sacrifice and and this is just an example, right, about creating the habit to say, I'm going to salary sacrifice $100 of my gross pay a month.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. I'm in the habit. I've kind of got it set up. And now year 2, what am I going to do this year? But at least now I've set it up with the employer. Even if it's just a small amount, I've got systems in place now. And then I can build on those systems. It's all about setting up systems, Kieran. That's what I reckon the first 12 months needs to be
good.
about.
That's
and then
a good way to look at it.
You can kind of ratchet it up after that.
Okay. The other one is insurances.
Yeah.
Like in your superannuation fund, as you sort of said before, that you want to aggregate those into one fund, or to avoid fees. There may be a reason why you would have multiple, but we won't go into those. Speak to your financial planner or speak to your accountant if that's appropriate. But the thing with insurance is you will be able to have life insurance through your superannuation fund. You can have, and part of this, you may want to look through your superannuation fund to see if they have other types of insurances that can be paid from your fund amount rather than being paid out of your personal bank account.
Yes. An example would be income protection.
Yeah, if your fund allows that, well, then now you don't need to insure through your personal credit card or however you're currently funding.
Yes.
If it's appropriate.
If it's appropriate. And again, these are just places for people to check out You
Yeah.
know, if you have got a fund in place, these are about saying there's different options that you can have this type of insurance. And depending upon where you are and what works for you, you might have option A, B, and C to get yourself to the same place. With different types of financial impact, depending upon your immediate bottom line and all that type of thing. But check it out. I think back to your point, you know, we talked about, you know, why do people have all these policies? What I will say is that if you just go with a mandated employer fund for most jobs, they'll stick you into their employer scheme, and that comes with default insurance. So
Okay.
people are not physically requesting the insurance, they're being given the insurance as part of the employer policy. So this is why a lot of people, particularly ones that aren't engaged with their super, they're not electing choice of fund because they're disengaged anyway. I'll go with whatever you go. So they'll stick them on the corporate employer plan, and then they'll find that they've got this death and TPD policy that they knew nothing about.
Yeah, which costs you a monthly premium, right?
It's a
Yeah.
it's a monthly premium that'll keep.
The other part here, Josh, sort of not to say all insurance is bad and it's a cost, because it may be appropriate for you that you have insurance to pay down a debt or to pay down something for your family or your kids or whatever that may be. So again, these are things you want to speak to. Most of the superannuation funds would have some way to help you with those decisions, or some sort of robo advice or something like that,
Yeah.
or a financial planner or accountant. So
Yeah.
sorry if we're repeating these things,
Yeah.
but very appropriate because there's legislation around this. So we need to make sure that we've made you aware of something, but you've got to have your own
Advice and a lot of these, for example, superannuation funds, have got financial advisors linked there. And you know, they've got teams set up that can give, you know, sometimes they'll give either general advice, which is kind of cost affordable, and then they can give you personal advice. And again, these are dependent upon what your immediate needs are, or go speak to somebody that's a very close confidant that you know that's all over this kind of stuff. You know, it could be a family member, it could be a good friend. Just make sure you get good advice and not get bro advice. You know, it's like the gym routines where they give bro advice, and you're like, you look at the routines and you're like, what were you thinking? And who were you talking to? The juiced up 19-year-old.
There was one stat I did dig out for this was, well, I'll ask you, what do you reckon the average Aussie male super balance is for the 45 to 54-year-old?
That's an unfair question because, you know, I'm all over this type
I know,
of thing.
you're pretty good at it. Yeah.
45 to 55?
Yeah.
It would be under 300,000. It'd have to be probably 250 to 300, I would say.
Under that, it's under 200.
Wow.
192,000.
Okay.
Well, if you're at 54 and you're thinking, hey, I'm almost to retirement and I'm 192,000. Like there is all different, you know, social securities and things which top up, and everyone's in a different circumstance as well.
Yes. And correct. Everyone's in different circumstances. And, you know, not everyone's focused on super. Some people want to direct their savings elsewhere into, you know, some people don't like the lock and key of superannuation and they want to invest into other investments. You know, we've talked about ETFs and bonds and things like that where they can access their money a bit more freely.
I can remember one bloke saying to me a long time ago was around superannuation. The different, obviously, it's a low taxation system, low tax rate in super for the most part, and versus outside of super, you know, top tax rates are around 50% in Australia. And his thing was, I use superannuation like religion. The closer I am to death is how much more time I'll put into it.
Okay.
So
yeah. Okay, that's fine, but you got to understand the principles of how basic compounding works too.
That's 100%.
So if you don't understand that,
if our listeners went off and just studied compound interest, just do that, or ask Google.
I do it with my kids.
Of compound interest.
I do it with my kids. You get your kids into it early. Show them the numbers on the page, particularly early because it's different. You know, when you start looking at it from 40, but if you show an 18-year-old compounding to 60, and what that looks like with very small weekly contributions, their minds are blown away because they cannot see that correlation between a couple of $100 a month and seeing a multi-million-dollar position at the end of it. And it's the earlier you start, the less you have to contribute and the better you're going to be. So I showed my 8-year-old that, and he was talking about it for the next 3 days.
How good.
And then now
You've got a mini Warren Buffett there.
No, now he just hits me up for Robux all the time. It's in and out for him.
What a
It's
Robux.
out of his head.
What a Robux.
What's Robux? Oh, there's a game called Roblox, which I think anyone that's got young kids would understand. It's a bit like Minecraft, but they just the game is designed just to extort funds from parents.
Compound that out.
Yeah. Well, they're getting some compound, that's for sure. That guy.
Well, you've got through half the pillars, like in the session, and you were actually right. Like that's almost an hour doing.
Right, so, we're going to cover off next week the investing basics, how to keep that simple for the next 12 months, insurance and estate planning. We're going to look at net worth tracking and goals. And then most importantly, we're going to look at mental bandwidth and support. Okay. It's great to have all these financial goals. If you don't have the right sort of mental health plan and attitude about, yourself and this situation and physical outlets and things like that, all of that's going to set you up for success. So that's really important. And that's a foundation to everything that we're doing. And then once we get through that, I want to sort of kick us off on a health and well-being series. I'm all about that, KM. I love that stuff, right?
You'll tell us how hot the sauna's got to get.
I'll tell you, yeah. And that and some other things, it depends on how personal you want to get. But yeah, we can get
You'll grow my hair back by the end of this.
I saw some interesting products, but we can talk about that in the health series. This has been
So actually you should probably so to finish off today we did the 4 pillars, housing and living decisions. Get that sorted. The debt strategy beyond triage, like the 12-month. You get your strategies down, build your safety buffer, and look into your super.
And look into your super. You do those 4 things, guys. I would, if you're listening to this, keep a pen and paper, get your Apple Notes out, whatever. Take some notes of things that you need to do, consider, come up with a bit of a checklist, spend the time. It's worth it. Some of these roads will lead to pots of gold, hopefully, for you, and bring you back on track quicker than you might think. So,
and be honest with yourself. Be honest with yourself on all of those.
Yes.
And hopefully we see you next week. And
yes, if you're not too
hopefully
traumatized,
you've done those things, you'll feel better about the next week.
Yes, and hopefully people aren't too traumatized by that or by our extended absence. But we're going to see. It'll come through. We're back. But we're going to find out in the numbers anyway. Mate, this has been fantastic. I'm really happy to be back. I've really enjoyed the podcast. I know we had the break with the holiday, but I was super keen. We did think about doing a podcast while we were on holidays, but I think, we're both family guys and we wanted to spend that time with our families and connect. And that's important. That's why we're trying to practice what we preach here, but we're back and we're ready to go and excited for next week and beyond.
Awesome, mate. Thanks, JP. Thanks for having me for the steak dinner.
Yeah, fantastic, mate. Have a great weekend. Oh, and please, happy Father's Day to everyone.
Oh, yes.
Father's Day.
Have a great Father's Day, everyone.
Have a great Father's Day, guys. I hope you get plenty of spoils and coffee in bed and you eat excess calories. Do all those things in that order. All right, mate. Thank you.
Mate.
Take care.
See you, buddy.
Bye.